integration and solution architecture will become increasingly important. So as you look at these best-of-breed options, and for those companies that do go down the best-of-breed path, there's going to be a premium placed on the skill set of people that can provide solution architecture and integration. And so I think it's an important thing that you want to make sure that you're not overlooking or that you're not underestimating when it comes time to think about these best-of-breed solutions for those that might go on that path, because now you've got to talk about how are we going to tie all these systems together, or how are we going to tie the data together, and how are we going to maintain all that, in the long term. And that's, to your point, Michael, it's not a bad thing. There's a lot of good reasons to do it, but you just want to make sure you address the downside or the added cost or focus that needs to happen as a result of that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the enterprise architecture aspect of this is very crucial. It's, in the older days, and today as well, with on-premise systems, you buy a suite from a vendor, whether it's SAP or Oracle or whomever it might be. You buy a suite from a vendor, and you have confidence, you should have confidence that the various pieces will work together more or less seamlessly. Now, at the same time, I'll raise the caveat that as some of these vendors have purchased other companies, the expectation of the parts seamlessly working together sometimes exceeds the reality. Sometimes it takes them a while to make that happen. But in general, that's the benefit of a suite, right? You're buying something and it's got all of the pieces, and it's more or less one size fits all to some degree from that point of view. On the other hand, if you are assembling a group of vendors to build your coherent system, it's the enterprise architecture and the consideration around the data integration. How will the data flow? And if you're using hybrid, if you're using a combination of cloud and on-premise software, and you want those different systems to share data, again, there's an enterprise architecture component to this that is really crucial. And I think it's overlooked or not. I don't think many companies do not pay sufficient attention to this aspect of the purchase and design of their system, and then they get stuck downstream. Things don't work right. It doesn't do exactly what they wanted, and it's like the bridge. Sometimes it can be a bridge to nowhere. It's like, well, we have it. We wanted to do certain things, but it wasn't designed that way. So to avoid that problem, really, as these best-of-breed solutions proliferate, this becomes more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. So the sixth one is an exciting one too, and that is the whole concept of Tier 1 versus Tier 2. And I'll preface this with a caveat that I've been in the industry now for 20 years, and I've never really liked the whole Tier 1 versus Tier 2 classification. One, because it never really had a lot of meaning. It was very unclear as to what exactly it meant. And two, because buyers end up getting confused by it or too caught up in the whole Tier 1 versus Tier 2 concept. So this one's exciting to me because, I came up in the consulting world and the ERP world when you had two Tier 1 options. You had SAP and Oracle, and that's all you really had if you were a Fortune 500 or a larger organization. If you're a large company or had any level of complexity, most of the Tier 2 players weren't going to be able to support your needs in terms of scalability and flexibility and all that good stuff. But what we're seeing here in the market is that it's not just SAP and Oracle anymore. Now you have a very strong contender in Infor in their various product suites that are competing well against SAP and Oracle. And not only are they competing well against SAP and Oracle, but they're doing it on SAP and Oracle's turf. And we've got clients of our own that are large, multinational, complex organizations that are not only open to considering Infor, but they're in some cases selecting Infor. And even outside of our client base, if you look at some of their recent client wins just in the last 6 or 12 months, they've had Fortune 500 companies in aerospace and defense, food and beverage, some pretty high-profile names that have chosen and deployed Infor. And so I think what they're doing is they're proving that they are a Tier 1 player and that they are a Tier 1 contender. And I think one of my predictions for 2016 or 2017 will be that the Tier 1 versus Tier 2 categorization should become obsolete because I think it's having less and less meaning over time. But I think the bottom line here is that if you're a big company, if you've got complex needs, it's not just about SAP and Oracle and maybe Microsoft. You've got Infor as a viable contender here as well. What are your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, Infor is an interesting company. I've spent a good amount of time with them, and their focus right now is on what they call beautiful software, beautiful enterprise software. And they've invested a lot in the user experience, and it's right into their DNA. So if you go to their office, the executives, the senior executives, sit in one shared space. Imagine a very nice, large conference room. They don't have private offices, and the goal there is to create an atmosphere, a culture of openness. And then Eric, you wouldn't guess which functional group sits most closely to the senior executives. You might think accounting, or you might think software development because they're a software company. You might think marketing, but it's not any of those groups. It is the user experience group, the user experience team. And they created an internal company, a design agency called Hook and Loop. And Hook and Loop physically is in the closest proximity to the senior executives, which sends a very powerful message about Infor's priorities and the importance that they place on user experience and making the software easy to use so that when it's deployed, users will adopt it more rapidly. So I think they're an interesting company.
Yeah, they are, and it's interesting to, you look at the back end of their software, and, they certainly have functionality and focus on different micro verticals. They're investing very heavily in the whole cloud, the cloud deployment. But what's interesting is that it's not just that stuff that they're focused on. They're focused on all the things you're talking about, Hook and Loop, and just the user experience, which from an organizational change management perspective, being one of the highest points or one of the biggest causes of failure in an ERP implementation, it's nice to see software vendors like Infor that are more focused on the user side of things rather than just the back-end technology and functionality.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think, let's face it, at the heart of things, ERP systems are places where you collect data. And the differentiating factor is how well does that system match the buyer's needs, and how well are people trained, and the change management, like you said. And so the user experience aspect of it is becoming more and more important because at the very beginning, Eric, you mentioned failures of various types. And I think that one of the largest causes of ERP failures, and by failure, I mean it's late, it's over budget, or the project is done and it doesn't deliver the expected results or expected value. So I think a key reason for these types of failures are mismatches between what the buyer expects and what the completed system is able to deliver. And a large part of that is user adoption and users understanding how their roles and their jobs may change, how the processes may change as a result. And so anytime there's a company that is really emphasizing the user-focused aspects of their ERP software, I just think that's a very, very good thing.